You're listening to the Footy First podcast on TSN 1050. Champions live here.
That's right, folks. Saturday morning means one thing and one thing only. It is time for Footy First here on TSN 1050. Nick McVicar, joined by my amazing co-host, Niko Giantsopoulos. Niko, how's it going, brother?
Amazing co-host. I like that. Intro there.
I gotta give you credit
Nick.
when you need it.
What's that?
I gotta give you credit when you deserve it.
So I deserve it this week? Did I do something extra special this week that I get the title of amazing
No, you've just been
co-host?
pretty good the last few weeks, so I'll give you the credit when you get it. So.
I'll take it.
And joining us in studio, your teammate and York United defender, Tass Mourdoukoutas. Tass, how's it going, man?
Nick, good to be back once again. I thoroughly enjoyed the last show. Spoke about some very interesting topics and covered a lot. So now it's a big week now. MLS opening weekend and whatnot. A lot of things to talk about. Looking forward to it.
He knows how to get right to the story because that is the big story from the week. It is MLS opening weekend, and I don't know about you, Niko. I am so excited about this weekend. I don't know why I'm so excited about this MLS season.
It's because we've just been talking about what players are signing, and we can't talk about actual matches and games and competition. So
True. So, and let's get it kicked off right. Joining us now is one of the best soccer analysts in Canada, one of the best pundits, Brendan Dunlop. Brendan, how's it going, man?
Wow, the compliments that you get thrown around on a Saturday morning. I got to come around more often.
Well, I try to make sure everyone feels welcome at Footy First, and I think I've done a pretty good job so far.
Brendan, I think
like
you got to
it.
come on the show more often. Nick's in an extra peppy mood. I've never seen him smiling this much.
Yeah, it seems to be. Well, thanks for finally giving me my debut, boys. This is the only time I could hang with you two pros.
Oh, pros! Wow, that's a compliment for us. I love it.
The professional athletes I met, Nick, not you. The professional athletes.
Well, yes, those guys too. Yes.
I work with you regularly.
Valid.
That's
valid.
You know.
Well, Brendan, let's get it kicked off right because it's obviously a big weekend. So, two questions to start you off. A, how excited are you for this MLS season? There's lots to talk about from the Canadian perspective. And B, what has you most intrigued regarding the three Canadian MLS teams?
Yeah, I'm really excited for this season, too. I think you put it down to the fact that, there was so much anticipation last year, especially in Toronto with the arrival of Lorenzo Insigne and then Federico Bernardeschi. And then they missed the playoffs, after what seemed like an incredible start against Charlotte. And you didn't get to see that materialize into something with this build for this season. And Toronto FC in particular made a lot of moves, to support the big spend that they made last year. And I think in a lot of ways they got a lot of things right. They improved defensively with some veteran experience that really was missing, and had an aging back line that they relied on perhaps a little too long. Chris McVicar was a great servant, but I think a lot of fans were kind of happy to see the team go in a new direction, particularly also in goal position that obviously Niko knows very well. There was two very good goalkeepers that they had for a long time, but had lost their confidence and seemed to have lost their form and lost the confidence of some of the guys playing in front of them. So to bring in an MLS Cup winner and Sean Johnson, someone who was highly coveted and had a lot of options, I think Toronto FC fans of all the Canadian teams definitely have the reason to be the most excited. And I think, I feel for Montreal fans because I think we could all see the writing on the wall that it was last season was must win. That was their best opportunity, and it didn't work out in the playoffs to Montreal, which is definitely becoming a theme. So reason to be hopeful. You never know. Brand new season on paper, they certainly don't look as strong as they did last year, but a brand new season means that everybody starts at the top of the table, depending where you are mathematically. Anyway, Vancouver's at the bottom of the table, but you know what I'm saying.
Of course, and then you mentioned the big names with TFC, with the Italians of Bernardeschi and Insigne. Bernardeschi, when he came in, actually had a great start. I thought he was probably on fire, and I didn't expect him to score as many goals as he did. Insigne, on the other hand, was maybe a bit slower of a start. How much of a difference will, now that they have a full preseason under their belt, kind of starting the season from the beginning, not in the middle, do you think we'll see a different Insigne on the pitch at the beginning of the season?
Yeah, I think it's going to be very different. I mean, you guys are creatures of habit, right? And to have a season, to come into the middle of the season in the summer, which is normally the end of your year, these guys have played in the traditional FIFA calendar, their entire lives since they were kids. So to be firing on all cylinders, to be at the top of your game when the weather is absolutely the best and nobody really wants to be, training as often as you are, particularly with the climate that we have in North America in the summer. you can understand why, starting on the front foot, it might be a little difficult. And for someone like Lorenzo Insigne, who's battled a lot of injuries, and I think whose body is starting to respond, a little differently to the strains of playing pro. By no means am I calling him old or not worth the money, but I do think that, to start in the middle of the year in a brand new country, in a brand new league, there's an adjustment period. And for Federico Bernardeschi, someone who didn't have the opportunities in Italy, wasn't coming from the position that Lorenzo Insigne was, he saw this as like a blank canvas, and I think just absolutely attacked it and bossed it. I think he loved the atmosphere from the city and really felt, grateful to the club. I think that's kind of the biggest difference between the two of them. I said that there was just something about the way Bernardeschi reacted where he just seemed so grateful to have been entrusted by the club with this big contract and to be embraced by the fans, someone who just absolutely loved that. So I expect that to continue this year, and I think the two of them will reach new heights. Honestly, I would not want to play against these two.
Definitely. And then everyone loves goals. I think Diomande is going to be very crucial for TFC this year. Obviously, Jimenez just recently left. We have Ayo Akinolo that's also, and then Jordan Peruzza, a younger academy product that I think you'll see him finally get some MLS minutes this year. But out of those three, who do you think is going to be their main go-to striker?
I tell you, Peruzza's hair is the best. Peruzza's hair is outstanding. It looks great right now.
Coming from you, that's a big compliment.
Yeah. Well, I know a little bit about the flow there. Yeah, I don't know anything about scoring goals. I'll tell you that much. I got one goal in 87 games in my co-ed league, but we'll leave that stat for something else. I really like the addition of Adama Diomande as well. Obviously familiar with Bob Bradley. He's someone who's scored in MLS, and I think that in the past, TFC had a real habit of getting guys that had a pedigree and experience elsewhere, but not MLS experience. And it took them quite a few years before they realized you had to have the balance. You think back to those years just before kind of Michael Bradley arrived. They had brought in some players with better and better international pedigree. You remember Torsten Frings, even Stephen Caldwell, absolute legend, showed up. But there wasn't the familiarity with the league that you need to be successful in this league. And I think Adama Diomande is someone, coming off an MLS Cup win, someone who's familiar with Bob Bradley, will slot in very, very well. And I'm hoping, push Ayo Akinolo. This is a big year for him. He has to kind of step up. He committed to Canada and, wasn't able to crack the national team roster to make it to Qatar. I know that was a dream, and maybe that was the timing just didn't work out. But there's someone with a very, very high potential and someone that the club believes in as well. So I think you'll see a nice tandem at some point between the two of them. I think that Bob Bradley's got some really good options, and with a full preseason with the Italians and some of the new additions under the belt, hopefully they can hit the ground running. But I do think that for some of the new additions anyway, as a team, it may take them a little bit to gel, but they're so top heavy, and if they outscore their opponents week in and week out, then that can kind of cover up any of the settling in or any of the adjustment period. It can cover it up if you keep filling the back of the net.
Brendan, it's Tass here, mate. I just still on Toronto, I guess. It's a big talking point ahead of this year, a team with a lot of high expectation going into the season. I think important is you mentioned they're going to score a lot of goals. I think undoubtedly they're going to score a lot of goals. The quality they have going forward is going to be a lot for teams in this league. But the old saying will probably ring true again if they don't shore up their defense. Attack wins games, but defense wins you titles. And in the long run, even if it's not a title, in the long run it'll get you to the right end of the season. So, like you mentioned, I think Sean Johnson is a huge addition. But getting their defense right and their balance through midfield is going to be really important. I guess my question to you is that midfield and that balance, where do you kind of see the high expectations of Mark Anthony Kaye and obviously Oso and players like that in there, Bradley, and what kind of balance and stuff will they add to each other, and where will Vazquez maybe sit in as well as the season gets on?
Yeah, good point. And the midfield is going to be so important. I mean, obviously, it's it's a little different this season. Michael Bradley's another year older, but I think he's proven with his work ethic, the way that he keeps his body in shape, that he doesn't want to slow down anytime soon. And I think that they have the cover for any mild decline that you might see this season. Honestly, I think that the reacquisition or the re-signing, of Jonathan Osorio is massive. That cannot be understated how important Jonathan Osorio is to this club. He's become a legend in 10 years, and a lot of Canadian fans may have wanted to see him get an opportunity overseas. That was a goal of his, and that might still come in his career. But for where Toronto FC is right now, with the opportunity they have this season with the Italians up front, this is definitely a project that he wanted to be a part of, and I think he's going to take his game to a whole new level. If not for injuries last season and the post-concussion syndrome that really derailed 2022 for Osorio and almost made him miss Qatar. A dream come true to get on the pitch and play at the World Cup. I think he's going to be fueled to step up his game again. And Marc-Anthony Kaye is someone who needs to. I think that there's a expectation on him that he has to fill some kind of bigger shoes than he did last season. Bouncing around from clubs is never easy. It didn't work out for him at Colorado. He's lost a step since his days at LAFC, but there's a really good opportunity for him to work again with Bob Bradley and playing alongside and training with and working with Michael Bradley. I think maybe he can kind of find that form and find his best game. I do like the fact that they brought in some league experience as well with Brendan Cervenia from FC Dallas to go along with Matt Hedges, talking about league experience. There's someone who's been a captain in this league and is going to kind of anchor that back line for them now. So I really like that they've then brought in complementary international experience with Sigurd Rosted, the Norwegian international. So there's someone who has a bit more pedigree and a different experience. But pairing the two of them together could be a very good start, and that could be the magic fix for TFC's defensive woes.
In conversation with Brendan Dunlop, the founder of Canada Soccer Daily and author of D-Row My Life. Brendan, I want to switch topics. We've talked a lot of TFC. I want to go over to Vancouver, the team with probably the most question marks in Canada right now. You lose Lucas Cavallini in the offseason. He heads to Mexico, gets a big opportunity there. You bring in 3 players in Cordova, Laborda, and, of course, the new goalie, Takaoka. What do you expect from this Vancouver squad moving forward this year? They had one of the worst defenses last year. Is it going to be some of the same, or are we going to see a huge improvement?
Oh, you'd hope that they don't concede as many goals as they did last year. The thing with Vancouver is they always kind of seem to stay within this range of average. I think that their signings could be a big boost. Cordova might be able to fill Cavallini's boots immediately. I don't think Lucas Cavallini was at his best, really at all in Vancouver. Didn't really live up to kind of that designated player contract, I think, in a lot of people's eyes. Someone that I think is maybe a bit just better suited for the Mexican game and has already hit the ground running at Liga MX, but definitely big shoes to fill. Cordova's got the experience of having played in MLS, on loan at Real Salt Lake. I think that can't be outdone as well. There's someone who comes over from the Bundesliga, with a bit more pedigree than maybe some of the other signings out there in the Pacific Northwest. But they definitely need to score some goals. At the back, I do wonder if Takaoka is going to take the gloves away from Thomas Hassel. The Canadian has done really well and did well at a very young age to grab the gloves and be the number one goalkeeper. I think that maybe that was a move to kind of push him. You got to have that healthy competition, as Niko knows, and having been someone that had another number one caliber player next to him in week in and week out. I think that could be a good thing for young Thomas Hassel. So Vancouver fans would hope that they can have a season where they're comfortably in a playoff spot. I do think that that'll be difficult, but I do think that the wild card spots with the new format, I do think that's well within reach for Vancouver, and for Vanni Sartini, that's got to be the goal. If they're not in a wild card spot this season and finish the regular season in a playoff qualifying spot, then there's going to be even bigger changes, which some people thought may have come this year, but I think they've done kind of just enough to see if they can kick the wheels and get things moving a little bit to get in the playoffs. I think they've got just enough to do it, but I guess we'll have to see how the season plays out for him.
I'm looking forward to seeing Ryan Gold as well. At the second half of the season, I really think he started popping off, felt a bit more comfortable. You saw with the talent that he had. I'm hoping that for a full MLS season now, he could, from start to finish, he could just really show out and be that leader that Whitecaps need. I kind of want to talk about the lack. When you look at Whitecaps' projected starting 11 right now, assuming the Japanese goalkeeper starts, it's lacking in Canadian talent. Where do you think a player maybe like Ryan Raposo can pop in on this lineup?
It's interesting, how it changes. Like, it's cyclical, where there was a period where there wasn't much Canadian talent at TFC as well, and then you look at how strong Montreal was with 6. I think it was 5 or was it 6 with James Pentemus that went to the World Cup with the Canadian men's national team. And now you look at Vancouver, and there's a total lack of Canadian representation there. I think Raposo got an opportunity for sure. I do think it'll be an interesting year for Russell Tybert, who still is a very important part of that club. I'd be curious to see, what those goalkeeper battles are like in training, because Takaoka is someone who's come over, with the full intention of getting full minutes so that he can improve his status to get into the Japanese men's national team. But, he's got to take that spot away from Hasal, in my opinion. And I think, Paul Dolan, a friend of the show, who's calling the games on the new Apple TV package for MLS, alongside Blake Price. Both those guys did the Canada games here on TSN Radio during the World Cup. He's a massive fan of Hasal and thinks that, he hasn't even started to he's just beginning to reach his potential. So that'll be a good battle to watch. But, not seeing, the Canadian presence that we have seen in the past in Vancouver, it's a bit concerning for Whitecaps fans. But I really do think that they're just kind of stuck trying to figure things out. And, really success in this league is measured by making the playoffs. And for them, they've got to do that this year.
So who do you think is going to start game 1 in goal? I think it's going to be Takaoka.
Honestly, I think Hasal has to lose it. But I really don't know in Vanni Sartini's brain. If you listen to him speak, he's very much he's got a little bit of Jose Mourinho. He's got a little bit of Manuel Pellegrini when he speaks. He's got a little bit of Roberto Mancini, and he's just a very, very different character. He's also got a lot of Thomas Rongen in him as well. So I can't tell you what Vanni Sartini is thinking, but I think it would be Hasal. I'll take the other side of that bet for you. We can have a friendly wager.
Yeah, listen, I'll take Takaoka, and then we could talk about what we're betting later in the game. Nick's going off right now because before the show, he was saying that he also thought Hasal was going to start, and I basically slammed him into the ground and said there's no chance.
He basically threw me down. But I think it comes down to the fact that Takaoka only got there a week ago, right? Like, for me, more than anything, he didn't have the full preseason with the club. He only got there 8 days ago. That's a lot to put on a guy coming in for a week. So I think first game they give to Hasal, and then it'll be a battle the rest of the year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Should we move on to Montreal?
Yeah, one more Montreal, and this is a club that you mentioned already, Brendan. They've lost a lot of key players. Obviously, Alistair Johnston on the right side. Georgi Mihailovic is now gone as well. And now recently, Kai Kamara just got moved yesterday. So a lot of attacking players. Alistair out of the defense. Kone as well. Can't forget the Canadian. This is a team that has some holes to fill, but their defense is coming back pretty much unchanged other than Johnston. How big is that going to impact their season?
Yeah, for the team formerly known as the Impact, they're going to need a big impact from some of the guys that have been there before, and some of the guys that came up short on that season last year. Getting Victor Wanyama back is massive. I think that would have been a irreplaceable hole for them in the summer, and it looked destined that he was going to leave the club. But having him back and having Kamal Miller come off of the year that he had and then the World Cup performances that he had, to me, Kamal Miller was one of the standout Canadians. There was a handful and some great performances at the World Cup, but Kamal Miller was excellent, and he'll be absolutely massive for them. As will Sam Piet, as usual. I think that they've got some youth that they're trying to work into the squad that might have the opportunity to really step into the spotlight and come up big for the club. And I do like that they've got a new philosophy. They've got a totally new guy that they've trusted in Hernan Lozada, who, had a very strange falling out at his last job, DC United, where it seemed like he absolutely lost the room and then was replaced by Wayne Rooney. He's a manager that's talked about learning from his experiences, learning how to deal with people, and someone who's grown a lot in his time away. So now that he's in a brand new place, and he's really, I think, done a very good job of settling into the city and working the fan base. It says a lot for anyone who sits down for a job in that city and attempts to do the entire press conference in French. When that is not their first language, nor even their second language in Hernan Lozada's case. So I'm very, very interested to see how things go for him. He's a very intriguing manager, one of those young thinkers, very different mindset, someone who knows the league well. And I think that, Montreal's really needed that. Thierry Henry, for as great of a player as he was, and for as well as he knew the league for having played in it, it's very different as a manager, and it was very different. I think it's very different in that market, as Wilfred Nancy found out as well, and did very well last year, but didn't want to stick around for that project. And there's not a lot of people, I think, that can fault Wilfred Nancy for that. So Hernan Lozada's got a lot on his plate, I think, but I think the potential is there for Montreal to surprise and do something special. They're not going to finish second in the East, but they could very well still be a playoff team, and they may not have to go through the slog of the wild card. But it's good. This season's going to have its ups and downs in Montreal, and there weren't as many downs last season.
Brendan, I think it's important to mention they're obviously their strong, experienced spine, like you said, Kamal Miller, Rudy Camacho, and Waterman at the back, with Wanyama kind of sitting in front of what you assume they'll play a 3 again. And look, I think that's solid enough in itself as one of the best kind of defensive units in the league. Full stop. But I think where the goals will come from will be how well they integrate their new young signings and trying to cope with the losses of the experienced and actually not so experienced but high quality young players that they had originally, like Alistair and Kone. So how do you think players like potentially Sean Rea, CPL, under 21 player of the year last season, had a good impactful year, whether he'll fit in and be given an opportunity this season, and anyone else maybe that you might think of that might help them kind of with some creativity going forward?
I like the opportunity for Sean Rea. Honestly, it's really exciting when you see CPL guys make the jump, and you look at the success that Joel Waterman has had to be an excellent Major League Soccer defender. And I think that Sean Rea has got a real opportunity to play his game, and if he can find the back of the net early on, he could definitely solidify a place in that starting 11. I think someone that Montreal is going to rely on a lot, and I think someone who's incredibly underrated in this league because he plays in Montreal, is Romel Kyoto, who is an outstanding player. He's burned Toronto FC several times. Fans of this market would have seen that, and he's one of those players, similar to Kai Kamara, who's become that in a lot of markets where, you hate it when your team plays against him because he always seems to burn you. Romel Kyoto, to me, is someone who they really need to be at the top of his game if they are going to be contending this season, if they are going to be in a playoff spot. That's a guy who they really missed last year through injury, and is a big reason, I think, why their kind of playoff run came up so short, because he missed key games heading into the playoffs there and was not 100%. So if he can start the season somewhat near it, you guys know as pros that you never take the pitch 100% after the age of 8. But if he can be somewhat near the best of his game, Romel Kyoto, then I think Montreal can win quite a few.
I'm glad someone understands how I feel every day.
We've spoken now about the teams, TFC, Montreal, and Vancouver. Give us some predictions, Brendan. Which teams make playoffs? How far a run are they making? Quickly, what do you see?
You know what? I'm going to say all 3 teams make the playoffs. How about that?
Love it.
But
wow.
I think that Montreal and Vancouver are in the wild card spots, though, and I do think it'll be short playoff runs. But TFC, they're going to finish first or second in the East, and TFC is going to be a semifinalist.
Ooh,
I like
this MLS Cup season. Yeah,
TFC fans aren't going to be happy with that prediction.
After last year, they will be pleased with that prediction.
Bren, wouldn't you say that TFC fans, it's now win or go home at this point? They're all in for this season.
I think so. I just don't think that the team truly has enough in this league to win. But they're going to contend. They're going to score themselves out of a lot of problems, but I don't think that'll be enough to win it all.
I'm with you 100%. So, Brendan, we really do appreciate you joining us again. Founder of Canada Soccer Daily, author of D-Row. We're going to have you on again soon, but really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, for sure. Anytime, guys. Love chatting with you. Have a good weekend.
You as well, man. We're going to take a break here, guys. On the other side, we're going to get a little bit more in-depth on the team, specifically in the Canadian markets, and give our own predictions for the season, as well as the return of the prediction segment, where we predict every single game of the Canadian teams across MLS and CPL. So you will not want to miss that. On the other side, deeper dive. Let's go right here on Footy First. Welcome back to Footy First here on TSN 1050. Nick McVicar, Niko Giantsopoulos, and York United defender Tass Mourdoukoutas holding down the fort for you. And it is MLS opening weekend. We had a great conversation there with Brendan Dunlop, and I misspoke. I said Canada Soccer Daily. It's Canadian Soccer Daily. So I want to make sure I clear that up. Got to make sure. I apologize.
Sorry, Brendan.
But yeah, a great account to follow, great site. So if you want all your soccer news, head on over there. Guys, the big thing that everyone wants to know is who is going to be playing for their squads. And Brendan did a good job kind of teeing up what we're going to see from a lot of the teams. But let's get a little bit deeper into the squads, and we'll go east to west. So I want to start with Montreal. And we already talked about them bringing back the same back three in Miller, Camacho, and Waterman. That's a huge thing for them. Pantemis, obviously, in goal. Lapalainen's going to return as the left wing back. I think that's a huge keep for them. He had a great season last year. A lot of goal contributions and assists more than anything. So he's going to be a big key. Piet Wanyama down the middle. And then their new signing, Herrera, is going to be the right back, filling in for Johnston. It looks like they're going to start Mason Toye up top with the exit of Kai Kamara, and then Romeo Kyoto. And this becomes the question mark, because I would have said Matko Milovic is going to be the other starting center attacking mid. But he's hurt. He's not playing for the first few weeks. So that's a hole. There's a few guys like Vilson who could get a chance there, or they might actually put Vilson up top and put Toye there. But that's a question mark for me, and this team looks like they're not going to be as good offensively as they were last year. And Niko?
Yeah, I mean, the MO for Montreal, although they were leaking goals, was they were such a strong defensive unit, and then they happened to get a couple of counterattacking goals. Mihalovic last year was very dangerous for them. Kyoto, he needs to kind of step up now and have just as good of a season as he did last year.
Absolutely.
And for me, Wanyama, he was the best player for Montreal last year. I thought he was a steady presence in the midfield always. So again, when you miss pieces up top, if he could step in and kind of fill that void, it'll be huge. A name that jumps out for me in the big storyline is finally James Pantemis.
Yeah.
He's given the number one gloves. He's shown in the MLS that he could be at the MLS level, but he's never been given the opportunity to be a club's number one. He's always had to battle it. It's been difficult. As a keeper, when you're just given the reins, you immediately get this confidence, and I think it's easier to perform throughout the duration of a season. Anyone could have a good game, 2 or 3 games, but you got to be consistent over a full season, and that'll be what Montreal fans are going to be looking for in Pantemis and Canada Soccer fans. He was at the World Cup. He's in the GK Union in that trio of players that were in the World Cup. Can he step up and be the guy for Montreal and just hold down that number one spot?
And I mean, with our keeper aging out at this point, right? He's not going to be there for the next World Cup. We need to have a third guy there, and we got Dane St. Clair. We got Max Crépeau, assuming that he can return from that horrific injury at the end of last season. Who's the third? Pantemis has the inside track right now. Like, this could be a big couple years for him in Montreal.
Yeah, and then in that transfer window in June, does Kamal Miller or Joel Waterman move? And if
Big
so,
question.
How do they fill? And then again, I go back to Pantemis. Is he able to step up and fill in a void if you miss a player from your back line? Taz, as a defender, what are your thoughts on the Montreal's back line?
Like I mentioned to Brendan, I think for Montreal, it's going to be how the story of their season. I think if they can stay solid at the back and stay balanced through midfield with Wanyama and Piet, I think it's going to go well for them.
Yep.
Like Niko said last year, there's a lot of guys who can kind of grab goals off counter-attacks and things like that, and I think it'll be the same this year. However, that defensive line, if it stays structured, and like Niko said, Pentemis is huge for him. And as a player, understanding that you're here to be the number one, or you're going to be given a starting role and an opportunity to perform at your full confidence and full level in your mind. There's nothing really better than that in football. As a starting keeper, you've been a backup keeper, and I've had the same sort of feeling the last few years. So it'll be huge for Montreal, that structure. And I mean, out of all the players that might leave, I have a feeling Kamal will be one of the main ones that they'll want to try, I think, keep a hold of out of the three at the back. And I think for me, it's a huge year again for Kamal. He did so well at the World Cup, watching him so effective, and he's going to be a really driving force for them at the back this year.
What's your opinion on Kamal as a center back?
I think I like all of the three at the back because they're all comfortable on the ball. It's kind of the way I view football, especially in the modern game. Everyone kind of has to play. There's definitely a big importance on positioning and the dirty work and the block tackles and getting smacked in the face every now and again. It's going to happen, and that's the beauty of football. But the way Kamal plays for me, super athletic, good in the air, really comfortable on the ball, balance on the left side as well. I really like Kamal, and what he showed in the World Cup at the very top level against some of the world's top players is that he's right up there. So keeping a hold of him mid-year might be difficult if he starts the year well, but should they do so, I think they should be strong this year.
Nick, do you think Piet is the guy in the middle?
In what sense? Could
he be like a mainstay Montreal midfielder for a whole season and just keep this team ticking over and just being solid in the middle? I think that he's up and down.
He is up and down, but he's shown that he's that consistent player for Montreal. He has more up and down games when he's playing for Canada.
Yeah.
But when he plays for Montreal, he plays a consistent game. It's nothing fancy. He's not going to wow you in any way, right? He's that old school kind of like, he's a modified 6, but I'm going to say he's like the old school 6 where win the ball, just quick pass. Don't try to do anything fancy. You don't have that in your bag. He knows that. He's aware of that fact. The only thing that I think would affect him this year is he is starting to get up there in age, as we've noticed. Like, he doesn't have as much pace as he used to. Not that he was ever like blistering fast, but he's lost maybe a half step since he came into the league. How does he adjust to that with all of these young guys coming into the league across the league? We have a ton of young talent that are just going to want to run.
The game's getting much faster.
It's getting so much faster. So how is that going to affect him? But I think he's fine there, especially with Wanyama beside him. The two of them together kind of complement each other, as we saw last year. And the more that we can see them play together, I think the more comfortable that they get, they're going to be fine. Again, the biggest question mark is how is this team going to put goals in the net? Like, they don't have goal scorers. And this is a team that last year, they finished top 5 in goals, which I didn't realize, but that kind of shocked me. But they finished top 5 in goals, and they had the 5th best goal differential,
which explains why they were so high up.
Right, that's
table.
why they were second. Yeah. But you lose that goal scoring ability up top, especially with the loss of Mihailovic and Kamara together. Like, those guys were so key for the attack last year. I don't know if you have the players in camp right now that can fill that role. So you're going to lose maybe 5, maybe 10 goals. And that goal differential goes from 13 all the way down to 3. And that changes your season. And that's why I think they're going to be fighting for a play-in spot, right? Like, they're going to be fighting for that wild card.
Yeah. And a new head coach,
Yeah, new head coach, too.
I also asked the question because Piet now has to earn the trust of a new coach.
Right.
It is a clean slate, and the team isn't as strong as we kind of alluded to. So sometimes it's easy to look good on a very strong team that's high up on the table.
I just don't know who else. I just don't know who else would be pushing him for that starting role right now, right? Because they got a lot of young guys. Don't get me wrong, right? Like, I can list off, like, you got Chouanier, Asi, Ray is more of an attacking guy, so he's not really competing. Maybe Iliadis, who they added from Greece. Like, these are young guys. All of them are under the age of 23.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said for the experience that they have. And with Pierre, obviously a league veteran and things like that, we know that you spoke about him being potentially half a step a bit slower. I think the way good players, if they're going to play every week and have that experience behind them, that half step they kind of make up for by a wealth of experience now and understanding the pace of the league. And they've developed a bit of a relationship in there now, that back three and the midfield too. And so I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue for him or for them. However, for me, I would have liked to see with some more balance. I think someone like Wanyama sitting in front of a back three, you kind of have that defensive solidity and that ticking over, where I would have liked to see someone maybe a bit more creative in there that's going to push Piet, maybe help the team score more goals, like you mentioned, where the goals are going to come from. Someone that can be a bit more box to box, make late runs into the box, things like that. Because they know they have the cover behind. So it'll be interesting to see. And like Niko said, new head coach and things like that. There'll be new ideas and fresh faces. People pushing every single week for a starting spot, so it's going to be exciting to see, that's for sure.
No, for sure, and like I'm interested to see how this team does coming off a second place finish in the East, and we can flip the script to TFC now. This is the opposite. Like TFC had zero defensive structure last year, as we've said. They were awful defensively. Attacking, we weren't worried once we got the Italian duo connection joining. Right, with Bernardeschi and Insigne.
I have to stop you there. I always laugh now when we talk about the Italians. I feel like I'm watching Kicking and Screaming, and we're cheering for the Tigers.
Pass it to the
Italians. I know that joke has been made a million times, but I still laugh whenever people refer to them.
It's so relevant. But that attacking duo, along with either Diamond or Ayo Akinola, as well as bringing in the midfield of Oso, like TFC attacking-wise, there's no issues. It was the defense that cost them so many games last year, and now it looks like they shored up the goaltending, which was a big concern with Sean Johnson. Again, until we see him play in the system, it's hard to say that it's 100% shored up, but this guy was second in the MLS last year in clean sheets. So that tells you a lot right there. You bring in the experience of Matt Hedges, and we just talked about how important experience is, and Sigurd Rosted from Europe. This back line looks significantly improved from last year, and even Petretta on the left side. I can't forget him, because they've added 3 new pieces on that back four.
Petretta on the left back is one that kind of is a bit annoying. He's Italian. We had Luca Petrasso, who was doing amazing for TFC the first half of the season. Then we got rid of him, sent him to Orlando. Great opportunity for him.
Huge opportunity.
But then when Criscito retires, then unretires, and plays back in the Serie A, at that moment you're kind of like, man,
we're in trouble.
I wish we didn't get rid of Luca Petrasso. It would have been great to see an academy Canadian left back starting for TFC.
Agreed. But you know what? Petretta comes with tons of experience too. This guy's played the last 8 years in the top flights in Switzerland and Belgium, and had played in multiple Europa matches. This isn't some guy who was just in like a bottom half team. This guy was playing top minutes against big clubs in Europe. So I don't mind adding a guy like him. As much as it would have been nice to have Petrasso, adding a guy with his experience is huge.
I think, obviously, for me, having someone that can be from the academy that you can grow and develop, and you never know what kind of level they can get to. Of course, you make a good point. Petretta's played high level. He's played overseas, European experience, things like that. It's good for the time being. I think for the growth of young players in this league, Canadian players and things like that, to develop them. This Luca Petrasso might be a Champions League quality left back in the next 10 years. So you never know, kind of you're taking opportunity away from someone. Of course, he's got a good opportunity now in Orlando. I'm not saying his career's gone.
Yeah, he's not done.
He's got a great opportunity now to kick on and hopefully push the starting spot there, and you never know what it will end up, but obviously it could be a big loss for TFC still.
Big question for TFC is when Larea's loan move ends, what's going to happen with him? Do you think he's going to re-sign?
It's a great question.
Do you think he's just going to go to another team in Europe? Is Nottingham Forest for some reason going to give him a chance now? I doubt that. Or are we going to see Jaquil Marshall-Ruddy come in and finally get some consistent MLS minutes at that right back position?
It's a great question. I wish I had an answer for you, because that would make everyone's lives a lot easier. But I would say, in my opinion, what I think is going to happen is I think his loan ends in June.
Yep, it's an 18-month loan, so it ends at this transfer window.
I would suggest that maybe they do like a short loan for the end of the season, just to make sure he gets all that playing time prior to the English league starting up, and then maybe they call him back. I don't know. It's a tough question. And Tass, maybe you have more info than I do, but
Yeah, look, in terms of info, about the same as you, maybe even less. I think understanding Luray as a quality player with good experience. Me and Niko spoke before the show. It's an interesting one because he's someone that has, and already stated, and gotten a European move and has a European ambition, but then just to be here for such a short amount of time last year on loan, and then only just to maybe re-sign again seems a bit, like not a step back. It's still a big club and a big league, don't get me wrong, but with someone that might now look to push on to another club in Europe, another stepping stone if Nottingham stay with their current wing backs and the form they're in, and that's up for the coach to decide over there, the gaffer. But I think it'll be a big year for Luray. Start the season real strong, and it could set him up for potentially another move. It depends. It really does. It depends on. That's why it's so exciting. A fresh season with new faces and things like that. Some people really grasp it straight away, and some people, tend to just ease into it. And it's different for everyone. Like I mentioned earlier, Kamar Miller could start incredibly well and get a move, and it changes their backline altogether. So you never know.
How fast can TFC gel is the main question, and it starts tonight at 7:30 when they take on DC United. And Sean Johnson is starting to go for TFC. TFC's going up against
his
Alex Bono in DC United, so he's going to have something to prove.
Good storyline.
Sure.
Oh, there's so many good storylines. We'll get into more. We'll get into more of them on the other side, and we'll finish off with the Vancouver Whitecaps. A little bit more in-depth talk about them. You're listening to Footy First here on TSN 1050. Welcome back to Footy First here on TSN 1050. Nick McVicar, Niko Giantsopoulos, and York United defender Tass Mourdoukoutas. We've done Montreal, we've gone through TFC, and now it's the Whitecaps, who I think this is the team with the most question marks heading into the year, and that's just because they had the most question marks last year, really. Like, TFC, it was very simple. They have no defense. One question mark, they've sort of sorted that. Montreal, they have no offense. There's still question marks about that. But, there's the biggest team with the most question marks is Vancouver because they kind of have holes all over. Niko, what do you kind of see in this Vancouver 11 that maybe you are excited about or maybe that you're really questioning?
I actually think they recruited quite well this offseason, and I think they have less questions than Montreal, in my opinion. What I think might hurt Vancouver in the long run, especially if they make a run in the Champions League, which they qualify for winning the Can Champ.
Yep.
They play a Honduras team in the first round, which is a winnable game again. So
absolutely,
I could see them making a little bit of a run. But on that note, I don't see Vancouver being all that deep this year. And as we know in the CPL and North American leagues in general, if you're going to have a cup run and a league run, you need to rely on a deeper bit of your roster. And I don't really see that all that well. I think their 11 is actually strong. I like Blackman. I like Gold. I like Gressel coming and having a kind of, not a comeback year, but reinstating himself as a top MLS player. So those are kind of how I see Vancouver going. But again, I think overall, I think they're going to have a relatively good season and catching that playoff spot near the 8th position.
Yeah, in the wild card kind of range, right?
As Brendan said, yeah.
Yeah, which I think the highest that I could see them potentially finishing is 6th. Like, this is a team that kind of just screams middle of the pack for me. Like, there's nothing super fancy about them. Offensively, bringing in Cordova, it's going to help, especially with the loss of Cavallini. But how big of an impact is he going to make? Like, he hasn't wowed, really.
Who, Cordova?
Cordova? He hasn't really wowed in the MLS, right,
He had
Taz?
33 games. I think he had 9 goals or something last season, which is an impact, yes. But I think from like Brendan said initially as well, someone who's watched a lot of and studied a lot of the MLS and a lot of the game in recent years. Cavallini is someone that is, yes, a big player, DP player, but I don't think he had massive shoes to fill as a number 9.
I just mean as their main goal scorer. Like, they didn't. They're losing their main goal scorer.
They're losing their main goal scorer, but they're getting back someone who I don't think has, a really, really high bar set for him.
Fair.
You're not losing Carlos Vela and trying to replace him or someone of that caliber. So for me, I think like we mentioned, middle of the pack. That's I guess my prediction. Whether they can make it into the playoffs will be big for them. There's a young Uruguayan lad named Matias Laborda who's come in from Nacional and played over 100 games for them, a huge club in Uruguay. And at just 23, he'll be young and hungry and super aggressive. So I think he'll only add to their backline and shore things up there. So I'm interested to see a lot of the players. We spoke about the new potential number one coming from, I guess my opinion, coming from the J League, goalkeeper of the year and a top team in the J League. He won't be coming to sit on the bench.
No, absolutely not.
Whether it happens round one or not, or whether he needs some time to settle, is still up for debate, and I guess we'll see this weekend. But I think he'll add some quality and experience, and he'll be able to impact right away.
Crazy prediction here before we sign off on this segment is Ryan Gold. I don't know what the odds are for him getting MLS MVP. Think about that one.
It's interesting.
I'll take a look for you in the break. We'll get that odd number for you. Mm-hmm. The other thing, I'm kind of surprised if you look on the MLS.com, they don't have Tybert starting for this squad. They have Kubas, Gressel, and I think it's Schopf in the midfield three.
Yep.
I'm kind of surprised by that, but
he's club captain. But again,
club captain.
He hasn't.
But he's club
wowed
captain.
The fans. He hasn't owned the fans there. I don't think he has.
But he's
the
club
support
captain.
of his
That's why
fans.
it's just like
well,
it's
sometimes
hard not
it's
to
about,
start him.
But it's about winning games, and if you don't think that guy can give you the best chance of winning games, club
Fair.
captain, you'll be a captain at practice, and then Gold will be the captain on the pitch if in the starting 11.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe so as well. I think Tybert's a fantastic servant for the club, a great role model, someone who's kept his body right and his mind right for a number of years, and is a good role model for the younger lads and new players coming through about how to be in a football club. But yeah, whether he gets a starting spot or not is up for debate.
Fair enough. All right, boys. It's prediction time. On the other side, we will give our predictions for the 3 MLS games this week, and we're going to do it a little bit differently, so I will explain on the other side. You don't want to miss that. You're listening to Footy First here on TSN 1050. Welcome back to Footy First here on TSN 1050. Nick McVicar, Niko Giantsopoulos, and our special guest, York United defender Tass Mourdoukoutas. And guys, we don't have a whole lot of time here, so we're going to fly through this, but it's prediction time. And this year, Niko, we're doing it a little bit differently. No more predicting a team to win if you think it's going to be a draw. You have to call the result. So you either have to call the team to win or you have to call the draw outright.
It takes a bit more skill now this year.
Yeah.
Last year was
there was a lot
warm-up.
of games that we both predicted would be draws, had to pick a team, and it ended up being a draw. So like we were on the right track.
And
but
sometimes on the air, I'm like, I sound dumb on the air. I wish I could say draw.
All right, so 3 games. Game of the week, you got to give a score prediction. So we're going to leave the TFC game is our game of the week. We'll get to that one at the end. So we're going to start off CF Montreal, Inter Miami, and Niko, who do you got?
I have Miami taking the win here. It's
Okay.
at home, tough place to play. Montreal, struggling, younger team. I think Miami will get the win here. Close game, though, obviously.
Okay, Tass?
I think, again, close game. First round's always a bit popcorn, but I think I'm going to go for a draw. I think I like Montreal. I still like their spine and their setup, so I think they'll be tough to break down for Miami early doors.
Fair enough. I'm actually going Montreal, and it more comes down to Miami's lack of anything offensively. Like, I don't like Montreal's offense, but Miami lost 2 of their key attacking players, so I'm going to go Montreal on this one. Vancouver at home against Real Salt Lake, Niko.
This is the one I think it's going to be a draw. Don't have much to say. Draw.
Fair enough. Tass?
I'm going to go for Vancouver to win.
And I'm on the same page with you. I think Vancouver actually pulls this one out. I think it's like a 1-0 game, but I think Vancouver pulls this out. Game of the week, TFC at DC United. Niko, winner, score.
I think this is going to be a TFC big win. I got Bernadeschi, anytime goal scorer.
Ooh.
Maybe a pen even. He's on pens for TFC this year until he misses, if he does. And I think it's going to be 3-1. If Bono gets a start, it'll be a difficult opponent to go up against your former team, and I think
sure.
TFC might get the edge.
All right. Tass?
I have a funny feeling about Bono being kind of successful this year with DC and having a decent year, so I think he's actually going to have a decent game. A little bit nervy, but I think he'll have a good game against his former employers. I think it's still going to be a TFC win. My scoreline prediction would be a 2-1 win. I think Rooney's going to have them coming out very hard. DC at home, so it's always a tough place to play. So 2-1 TFC still. but a tough game.
And it's funny, I'm like 100% in line with Tass. I got a TFC 2-1 win as well. I think offensively they have the ability, and with the new look-back line, they're going to be able to limit the goals this year. So giving up 1 a game, not too bad. That'll do it for us this week. MLS is back. Make sure you check it out. We're really excited here. You can catch the 3 Canadian clubs on TSN today in their local markets. I know a lot of the games will be on Apple TV, but today we get the games. We will be back next week with more MLS talk, more predictions, and just more soccer talk in general. Tass, really appreciate you joining us, man.
Thank you for having me again. I appreciate it a lot, boys.
For sure. Niko, we'll be back next week. You're listening to Footy First here on TSN 1050.